in layman's terms, it pulls you out of your king status. It pulls you out of your ability to stay strong, rooted, and grounded. So that's the first layer of this. In this video, we're going to learn how testosterone affects your brain, specifically how testosterone affects your drive, your discipline, and your determination. This video will be worth your time if you are a man that is 35 plus, if you feel like you have lost some motivation, if you feel like you don't have as much energy as you used to have in the past, if you feel like you're losing muscle mass, if you feel like that body fat is starting to creep up, starting to get a little heavy in the middle area, if you feel like you can't focus as easy, you get a little bit of brain fog, and if you feel like life is almost slipping away, it feels like you're not able to make your mark on the world as you once did. So if you're experiencing any of these, this video is going to be a game changer for you, okay? So after watching this video, you'll know exactly why you've been in a funk, but more importantly, what you can do to make this your comeback season and start accomplishing some of the goals that you may have set for yourself. Now, I am Coach Terrence Thomas. I'm a high performance health coach with over 35 years of coaching clients, patients, and athletes. I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs maximize their vitality, performance, and productivity. So my mission is to help men like yourself achieve what I call maximum congruency, meaning that I want you to not only have the money, but I want you to have the muscles and the mindset that creates the momentum to become the best version of yourself. So if any of this is up your alley, you're in the right place. So let's get started. So here is how testosterone affects your brain. First off, testosterone is not just about muscles and libido, okay? Testosterone levels have a very powerful effect on the brain. I'll tell you my story as to how this really hit me personally. So I was about 38 at the time, and I remember looking at a picture of myself with me and my daughter. I think we had been in a baseball game, and someone snapped a picture of us, and I was looking at this picture probably 6 or 8 months later, and I noticed that I didn't look like the person I wanted to look at the time. I mean, I wasn't out of shape or anything like that. I was lean, but I can see that I was getting a little bit too lean. And for me, I know what my ideal fighting weight is, meaning that I know the look and the feel that I need to have in order to stay at my best. And I just noticed right then that some changes needed to be made. And now looking back on it, not only did I have that too lean look, I also had, I started to notice some of the things that I'm basically explaining to you here. I was starting not to be able to focus and process things a little bit. And so I just started to notice that I needed to make some changes. And then that's when I took a good look and said, okay, it's time to start to make some changes. And for me, I have a serious family history of prostate issues. And the research has shown that once that testosterone level starts to drop, that those problems can start to come along to the forefront. But that's another video for another time. But I knew that if I didn't get a hold of this, I would be dealing with some major problems down the road. At that point, this is 2012, 2013, and I had already lost my best friend, my uncle, to prostate cancer. So that was very much at the forefront of my mind. So my point is, this is not just something that I'm lecturing you about. This is something that I'm experiencing, and I have experienced in the past. So be ready for some firsthand experience. Okay, so with that being said, I tell you all this to say that I am you, and what you choose to do about your testosterone levels will essentially dictate how the next decade of your life will go. Because I can tell you that those adjustments that I made in my late 30s absolutely created a positive ripple effect for my entire 40s. If you want a practical guide to help you apply what you're learning, get my book, Belly Shred Method. It's a system that I created specifically for men to help you improve your metabolic health, give you a practical routine, workouts, nutrition plan, and stress management system to keep you on point. It's sustainable. If you're a man 35 plus looking to get lean, find a sustainable way to stay in shape without hours in the gym, this is the program for you. So to get a copy of that book, there should be a link somewhere in the description. Now back to your program. Okay, I'll be 52 in a couple of months, just to put it in perspective. Okay, and the reason why I've been able to maintain this high level of health and vitality is because of the principles that I'll be sharing with you now, and the principles that you'll be learning as you subscribe to this channel. Just for reference, I always use this picture. I'll put a picture up here. This is me at the age of 15, and this is me at the age of 51 going on 52, just for reference. So you're not dealing with someone who is just talking the talk. I've been walking this walk my entire life. So if you want to learn from someone who has a long-standing history of this, you're in the right place. In other words, who would you want to learn wealth management from? Warren Buffett or someone who has won the lottery? You know the difference. So let's get started. So now let's unpack how testosterone controls your drive, discipline, and determination. Okay, so testosterone has a direct effect on a part of the brain called the amygdala. Okay, the amygdala, in a nutshell, is responsible. It has a high correlation with fear and anxiety, and testosterone does some very interesting things to the amygdala in this area. So here's how low testosterone kills drive, discipline, and determination. So we're going to talk about 3 different mechanisms as to how this happens, right? So mechanism number 1 is emotional instability, okay? It makes it more difficult to keep your cool. So when your testosterone levels drops, it affects the amygdala in such a way that it basically makes you emotionally unstable. I would say that in layman's terms, it pulls you out of your king status. It pulls you out of your ability to stay strong, rooted, and grounded. So that's the first layer of this. I wrote it down here, is that it makes it more difficult to keep your cool. Now, this particular detriment may not be important to you, but let's look at exactly how the brain has to compensate when it's more difficult to keep your cool. Okay, so looking at it from a technical perspective, your prefrontal cortex has to work harder. Okay, your prefrontal cortex, this is a part in your brain that's responsible for executive functioning. This area has to work harder when your testosterone is low. Now, how does this affect you, the executive entrepreneur or athlete for that matter? Okay, when it's harder for your prefrontal cortex to work, it compromises your executive functioning. Okay, what that means is when your executive functioning is compromised, it lowers your performance bandwidth. Okay, so what performance bandwidth is? Performance bandwidth is the mental energy that you have available to kick ass and take names. Okay, in other words, when your testosterone is low and when it's affecting that part of your brain in this way, you have less energy to thrive and do your job and to move forward. You'll do it, but it's going to take much more energy than it normally would should you have been optimized. So in other words, the mental energy that you have available is being drained almost like a parasite, okay? Low testosterone is literally a mental performance parasite. It's almost like, if you're familiar with cars and mechanics, sometimes you can have a parasitic energy drain on your battery. So your car will be off, and all of a sudden you'll start it up and it won't start, even though you haven't left any lights on, you haven't done anything to drain it, except there may be something in the system that's draining the battery. So when you go to start it, you got nothing. So that's essentially how low testosterone affects your brain and its ability for you to operate at peak performance, okay? So that's mechanism number one. Now, the second mechanism is that low testosterone reduces your desire and capacity to give a shit, to put it bluntly. Or in other words, low testosterone literally makes you less disciplined, okay? So the technical term for this is called biological salience. Biological salience, I had to look that up. And essentially that's what biological salience means. It means essentially your ability to care, your ability to attach meaning to the things that are meaningful to you, okay? So in other words, testosterone affects emotional intelligence and the ability to attach meaning to what is meaningful, okay? And dare I say, this is the antidepressant effect that testosterone has. More to come on that in another video. So these two reasons alone should start to give you a solid idea as to how testosterone is connected to your brain. And I hope this is giving you I hope this is empowering you to know that if you're in a funk, it's not just because you're unlucky or the world is against you or anything like that. There are physiological, environmental reasons and other reasons that we'll get into later as to why you feel, look, and perform that way, okay? And there are things that you can do about it, and that's why you're here on this channel learning all the stuff here. All right, so mechanism number 3, okay? This is the interaction of testosterone with other hormones, particularly cortisol. Now, if you have not watched my previous video where I break down my physical dominance blueprint, I talk about the 3 primary hormones, okay? The 3 primary hormones are insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline. Those 3 hormones are primary because if there is a dysfunction in any of those hormones, they can kill you quickly. So we call those primary for that very reason. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, cortisol, pregnenolone, all of those hormones are what we call secondary hormones. And the rule is this: you cannot have a secondary hormone dysfunction without a primary hormone dysfunction first, okay? But again, you can review that lesson to dive more deeply into this. So in regards to how testosterone affects cortisol, it has some very interesting interactions with testosterone. First off, testosterone and cortisol are antagonistic, meaning that they're like this. When one's high, one's low, they almost kind of counteract each other in certain aspects. But if you know what you're doing, you can use cortisol to enhance testosterone and vice versa. But again, that will be another video. But as it connects to this topic in terms of how it affects the brain, with low testosterone, cortisol dominates the system, meaning that it's higher, which lowers natural aggression, okay? So when your testosterone is lower, cortisol is higher, and it naturally lowers your drive. Because again, cortisol is a stress hormone. And again, stress is involved with fight or flight, okay? Oftentimes people flight, meaning retreat or back down. If you happen to get the opposite response, which is to fight, it will be in an environment where it's temporary. It's temporary aggression. It's temporary emotional instability. Again, you're acting out of your king energy. And nothing good is accomplished in that area. And this is all hormonal. I didn't mention, there's nothing about life circumstances or anything like that. This is literally at the cellular and hormonal level. So there are things we can do to control it. And this is explaining it, okay? So again, let me repeat this. So low testosterone allows cortisol to dominate the system, which lowers drive and determination. Okay, so really important. So just from that point alone, if you start to address and optimize your primary hormones without taking any testosterone boosting supplements, without taking any testosterone replacement therapy, you can set yourself up to start naturally, gradually improving your testosterone. And the most effective way to optimize your primary hormones, you already have at your disposal, which is diet, exercise, and living a healthy lifestyle, okay? And again, if you haven't watched my previous video on my physical dominance blueprint, I go into more detail as to how to make that happen, and it gives you a solid framework to work on to get that done. So the takeaway, you don't lack drive, discipline, and determination because you have bad luck. There are metabolic and hormonal reasons that are keeping you in a rut. When you optimize hormone levels, you not only regain momentum, but it creates a ripple effect for years to come. Okay, I hope you now have a decent understanding as to why you may be in a rut, and I hope you understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that there are solutions to being able to get you turned around. Now, to learn how to boost your testosterone naturally, you will find that in the next video. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.